So, what are we talking about today? We're talking about something that came up because it wasn't something that I was aware of for a while. And then a number of my students in Women Speaking Up had the same problem over and over and over again. And when we started to dig into it, we realized what was going on. And that was this. One of my students first came to me and she said, my problem with being visible is I am traditionally an accountant. I have operated in that world for many years. I obviously have technical qualifications and skills, but I'm also really interested in personal development. And actually, one of the things that really frustrates me about the finance world is the lack of understanding about the internal world of a human being and how that might be impacting on whether people take up the financial management tools that I have to offer. So she's got financial management tools, she's got logic, she's got rationality, she's got all of that going on over here in the finance world. And then she's got emotion and understanding of internal world and personal blocks and so forth over here. And she was saying, she was trying to work out where do I fit? I don't fit in either of these places. And so, what she had been doing and where she had been going around and around in circles from a visibility perspective was she would like go over here and then she'd try and fit the mold of being the finance person. But she'd be like, there's all this stuff missing. And then she'd go over here to the personal development space and she'd be like, but you also need the tools. You can't just break down the blocks. You need now to understand how to actually manage your money. You need the nuts and bolts of the financial management tools. So she was like, I don't really fit there either because they're very deeply in the emotional realm. They're very deeply in the logical, rational realm, and I'm in between. And when we worked through this, and there were other people with similar examples that I'll talk about later, the thing that we discovered was her fear of claiming the middle. So it felt comfortable to go and put herself in the box. But then every time she did, she was like, this doesn't fit right, this box. But it felt safer, let's say. And then it felt safe to go and fit herself in the personal development box. But then again, she'd be like, it doesn't fit me. This personal development box doesn't fit me. But she didn't want to claim the middle because therein lies the visibility issues because you're suddenly saying, you feel like what you're saying is no, and it's only about what I have to say. That was one of the things she felt. And what I said to her is, what if you could use this concept of being a bridging person? So it's not saying no to anybody else's way. It's saying there's a middle ground here and I am willing to claim it. And that requires a level of confidence around being visible for something different because you're saying something different. And when she started to do that, what she could do is she could anchor into, I'm the middle ground, I'm the bridge person. And so then when I step over this way toward the personal development people, I'm not trying to change the personal development realm. I'm just saying that there are all of these internal things around money. And then when you've done those, you're going to need some tools. And so come this way a little bit, walk across the bridge, come into this middle space. And then when she was over in the finance world, she could say, yes, all of these tools are helpful, but there's also loads more work around there's loads more internal investigation that's required. And that requires you to come over this way a little bit. And then she had the middle ground where she could say, here, this is where we marry these two things. So you might relate to that example. If you're listening live, tell me if you've had trouble between different worlds. Another one that I had a lot of trouble with for a while was I used to teach people about how to run a soulful business. And one of the things about claiming the middle in the middle ground was there are invariably parts of each area that you will not align with because you're in the middle. By virtue of being a bridge person, you see the connecting points, but you're not necessarily in the extreme of either camp. So in soulful entrepreneurship, I was bridging the entrepreneurial world, some of which I loved, some of which around freedom and creative expression and different lifestyle and all of that stuff. I loved all of that, but I didn't love the parts of it that were 100% focused on just making money, because that just didn't feel like a value that was in alignment to me. It wasn't that I didn't want to make money, but I wasn't in that camp of it's all about the money. So I had to choose which pieces of the entrepreneurial world I was going to bring to the middle. And same with the soulful element. So I love so many parts of spirituality and personal development and personal growth. But then there's a part of spirituality, a part of that community that's anti money, that has bought into an idea that money is evil or wrong or it's selfish or greedy um, to pursue money. And so there's a lot of scarcity and poverty mentality in that industry. And so I had to put that piece to the side and lean into the abundance mentality instead and bring that into the middle. So there's more work to do. If you don't fit in this category and you don't fit in that category neatly, there's a bit more work to do in working out, well, what's the middle ground I'm bridging? And what I was wanting to bridge was I was wanting to bring the spiritual community to benefit from entrepreneurial skills, because I know how desperately the world needs to hear from these people. It needs to hear from more spiritually conscious human beings. And the way to hear about them is to utilize the skills of entrepreneurship. So I wanted to bring them in, and I was interested in the entrepreneurial world becoming slightly less materialistic in its focus and more and building a more balanced view of their values, building a more balanced value system. So that's what I was doing. But in order to do that, I could not say I either am in this camp or I'm in this camp. I had to claim a middle ground that wasn't being claimed by many people. And that requires overcoming the visibility story of what if I'm different? What will that mean? Will people judge me? You've got to overcome those fears of suddenly being ejected from the mob and being ostracized. And it feels a bit lonely in there for a little while until you realize that the middle is actually where many, many, many people want to be. You see this politics is playing out obviously at the moment in America. You see this all the time. You see noise at the extremes and you see much less visibility on the middle. And yet most people will hang in the middle. So having the confidence to claim the middle is huge. If you're a couple of other examples, if you're a social entrepreneur, that's the terminology I use for somebody who's very interested in social justice and wants to utilize entrepreneurship to get their word out, get to have more impact and get the word out about their cause, their movement to the world. But again, social justice community has a difficult relationship with money. The entrepreneurial community can be not particularly focused on social outcomes. Actually, I'm going to say the business community more than the entrepreneurial community. The business community has demonstrated that there's a wide spectrum. There are some people who are very interested in social impact, but there are also a great number of people who are not. And so the business community can become very ruthless. So when you're a social justice entrepreneur, when you're a social entrepreneur, you've got to bridge these two spaces and work out, well, how do I stand in the middle of this? So you have to break down stories about what entrepreneurship is, and you have to break down stories about how social justice must look. And then you can come into claiming a middle space that is about a true embodiment of all of yourself, all of who you are. The creatives and creative entrepreneurship, exactly the same thing. Creatives have a very vexed background with money, the old stories around you can't make money as an artist, you can't make money as a writer, etc., etc. There are all those old stories. There's an even more prevailing one, which is you've sold out if you become commercially successful as an artist, which then puts you in direct conflict with entrepreneurship if you want to use entrepreneurship. And I strongly recommend people using entrepreneurship because it's such a gift of the 21st century, particularly, where you can use the internet, you can build a business so easily. So many barriers to building a business have disappeared completely. You have financial freedom, you have lifestyle freedom, you have so many opportunities through entrepreneurship. But most of all, for me, you have the opportunity to create greater impact in the world. And that's what really interests me about the tools of entrepreneurship. So if I'm an artist, for example, then it is important for me to understand how to bridge these worlds, utilizing the tools of entrepreneurship to then be an artist who actually can feed themselves, can make money. And again, you're going to break them down. I need to break down some old stories about each of those industries. One of the things we do in Women Speaking Up is we break down this either or mentality. And we do that so that if you feel that you want to stand in the middle, you can. You cannot claim the middle if you're in this mentality of it's either that or it's that. I have to be that or I have to be that. So you have to consciously break that down. We use a specific, very specific tool inside Women Speaking Up to start to embed the perspective of multiplicity of perspectives, getting comfortable with it not being either or, but it being this and that and more. So that's one of the tools we use, which then helps you effortlessly to kind of move to where your middle ground is and go, oh, it's okay to hold this space in the middle. You try what you're moving away from is this feeling of I'm trying to show up here. So the visibility component, I'm trying to show up here and that feels inauthentic. I'm trying to show up here and that feels inauthentic, but I don't feel like there's a space for me. One of the tips I want to give you is the first step that you can take is to start to consider what are the connecting themes between my areas that I'm bridging. What are the connecting themes? So I'll give you some examples. Connecting themes between spirituality and entrepreneurship might be, they certainly were for me, the theme of freedom, because you're exploring freedom from different angles. You're exploring freedom when you're exploring enlightenment and liberation in the spiritual realm, and you're exploring freedom from the perspective of lifestyle freedom, financial freedom, and so forth in the entrepreneurial space. So if you can anchor yourself, if you're a bridging person, if you can anchor yourself into that, that's my clarifying energy or focus, or that's what I know will bring these two communities together, is this idea of freedom. Then you are so much clearer about your visibility efforts. You are so much clearer about, okay, I just stay here and I talk about freedom, and I talk about freedom from all of these different perspectives. And that's how I bridge the worlds. That might be your anchoring idea or anchoring energy, but it might be something else. I'm just giving you some examples. Another anchoring energy would be, or anchoring concept, if you're a social entrepreneur, is changing the world. So social justice warriors want to change the world. Entrepreneurs are really interested in changing the world. They're just going about it in different ways. But if you can anchor in the middle as the people who change, we're interested in changing the world. We're going to use tools to change the world. We're going to use awareness and activist approaches, etc., etc. I'm going to bring all these together. That's how you bridge those worlds. That's one way you can bridge those worlds. There's always a connecting point. Creatives and entrepreneurship is creative expression. There's so much creative expression in entrepreneurship. There's so much obvious creative expression in any creative endeavor. You can entrepreneurship just allows you to enhance your creative expression. And then motherhood is another one where patriarchal conditioning will say to us, mothers look like this and this is how they behave, and this is how they show up in the world. And business owners look like this. Business owners, by the way, are built on a template that is very gendered, that is about males who had a wife at home looking after domestic responsibilities, who was able to show up in the workplace and just be a worker and end the day and then go home and all the domestics have been taken care of. Motherhood was the complement to that. So when you're doing motherhood and building a business, what too many women find is that they're juggling all the balls. But if you can, and it's creating like chaos in their lives. So the first thing you need to do is break down the conditioning. This is what we also do inside Women Speaking Up. We break down patriarchal conditioning, which keeps us behaving in ways, both in terms of if you're a mother, both in terms of the way you show up as a mother, and in terms of the way you're showing up in your business, because you're trying to be all stereotypical mother over here and you're trying to be all stereotypical business owner over here. You have to break down all of those stories. So we do that in a couple of different programs in Women Speaking Up, in order for you then to say, I'm free of all of that. Now what does it look like to be in the middle? And there's so many different connecting themes between motherhood and running a business. And they can be anything from logistics. Women, parents, and particularly women who are parents, are fantastic at logistics, which is also a vital skill, and project management, which is also a vital skill in running a business. So it might be that that's the connecting place for you. It might be about being of service to other people. It might be about creating connection to other people. All of these things, they flow through entrepreneurship and they flow through motherhood. So I have students who also are trying to bridge the space between feminism and fitness. And obviously there are parts of the fitness industry that are deeply patriarchal and objectify all bodies, but particularly women's bodies. And so they're looking for the space in between, and the space in between is the body positivity movement. I have students who are looking at, well, how do I integrate feminism and feminist ideas into the birthing industry? And in there, the connecting point is the point of women's sovereignty, women having sovereignty over our own bodies. And everything can build out from there. So I hope you can see how once you get that connecting point, you can anchor into the connecting point and you can build your visibility around that theme. You can talk about a lot of different things, but when you do, they're coming back to the same bridging, the anchor point of the bridge. And that way, what you do is that you start with a small group, but then you easily expand, and more people from this side start to go, oh, hang on, let me walk across this bridge a little bit. And more people from this side saying, oh, come on, I'm interested in what's happening on this bridge. And then you grow your audience like that. And of course, in order to do all of that, you have to have the courage and the confidence to claim space. And that's another piece that we do in Women Speaking Up. And the reason we do that is because we're conditioned as women not to claim space. There's loads and loads of research have been done on women claiming space in the public arena. And basically the messaging is go home, stay in the home, be quiet, be small, be soft, even with your voice. Don't claim too much physical space. Don't talk too much. There's all this messaging that goes on. So as a woman living in a patriarchal society, claiming space is its own visibility challenge. So you must also work on breaking that down. So this is another component of what we do inside Women Speaking Up, so that you then can confidently say, yeah, this is the space I'm claiming, and it's okay. I can take up space on social media. I can take up space in people's emails. I'm not gonna obviously stalk people, harass people, be like overly pushy, but I am gonna recognize that I am entitled to take the time to express my perspective, to expect that people might be interested in what I have to say, to engage with people, to be taken seriously in the world. So all of that is a part of what we do in Women Speaking Up. And then the final piece that feeds into this is, but how do you do that without hustle? How do you do that without push, 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 push? And so the other piece we look at, which is also connected to deconstructing an old way of working, which is very patriarchal, which is very push, 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 very unhealthy in its masculinization, is we work on leaning into the feminine. We work on how to do this work with ease, with joy, with pleasure, in flow. How do we bridge the worlds? And this is the part that we look, that this is how we've kind of structured the curriculum inside Women Speaking Up, is how do we bridge the world between healthy feminine, bringing healthy feminine and healthy masculine, and how do we find that space? And as you, as a student, have the experience of exploring the feminine, exploring the masculine, exploring the feminine, exploring the masculine, you naturally in yourself have had the lived experience of bridging worlds. And then by virtue of having that experience as a student, it reveals to you how you can bridge worlds in your industry, how you can do that in your business.